Well, hello there. This is not a special edition of MoCast. This is actually a Marcelian Online, but it is a podcast. It is part of the MoCast tree, the MoCast talent tree.
The tree? Yeah, indeed. You might expect this to see it on the MoCast channel, but since the talk that we're going to have is
very important,
kind of newish and important, and actually we're really excited to talk about this, we just figured that we'd get it out as soon as possible.
Yeah, and what do you know? One of our oldest and most bestest friends of the channel and collaborators, and Whispyr. Hello, Whispyr. Tell the good people what you do, what you're all about. Then we're gonna move.
Hi. So I am one of the moderators in the Rogue Discord. I'm also the Wowhead writer for Assassination Rogue. However, I do theory crafting for Subtlety, and I play Subtlety fairly actively, and all that stuff. So excited to be here.
Oh yeah. Let me tell you guys, Whispyr is the main reason when I main subbed in 9.1, I got from 40% parses to 90. Thank you, Whispyr, for all the help. It was lovely. And next on the table, for the first time on the show, Mr. Pushnoir. Push, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am what we call a Subtlety one-trick pony, but I do also play whatever my raid needs, but otherwise, I am a community figure in Ravenholdt and a raid in Color on Storm Reaver, which is basically my identity, I guess.
Perfect. So we know that Push is very, very focused and experienced on the raiding side of things. Whispyr is obviously one of the best, if not the best, theory crafters out there for rogues. I don't know. I've seen a couple of things. But he also has a lot to say in terms of like Mythic Plus. However, the subject at hand today are the Subtlety Rogue talents, and specifically we're gonna look at a couple of examples, a couple of the builds the boys have prepared for us to discuss. So we're gonna start it off with Whispyr and get some of the general vibes regarding the sub talent tree, and I would like to start actually with the general rogue tree and how that impacts sub, and then we can move along to more specific things. So Whispyr, first thoughts, impressions?
So in terms of the class tree, its general layout is sort of 3 paths down. You have a left path, which is more assassination focused traditionally, the middle path, which is more outlaw focused, and then you have the right path, which is more subtlety focused. I think in general, the right path is perfectly fine. There's a lot of utility at the start of the tree, obviously. You have things like Shadow Step Charge, Cloak of Shadows, Feints, all of the stuff that you're familiar with, that's at the top of the tree. Once you get into the branching path, sort of towards the middle of the tree, there's 2 options for each path. That's when the damage starts to come in. And a lot of these effects are very beneficial for sub, regardless of which path you're in. So like going left to right, you have crit strike chance, weapon poison damage, versatility, ambush gives another combo point that works on Shadow Strike. You have energy cost of finishing moves, and then damage while stealth is active, which subtlety obviously benefits from. In general, as it is laid out, subtlety usually wants to be farther on the right side of the tree due to Shadow Dance at the bottom. But I think that there's something for subtlety in basically every path. So there's a lot of good choice there, and a lot of interactions that I actually really enjoy. I think the rogue tree itself is actually set up really well.
Cool. I'm gonna have a couple of questions, but one curious on what Push thinks about the general rogue tree.
I will agree with Whispyr. I think that it might be a bit heavy on the right side for basically all 3 specs, but in general, I think the rogue class tree is pretty good put out.
All right,
compared to sub. Yeah.
Well, this is to make it super clear. This is for the first time I looked at the tree because I really wanted to have the full-on surprise on the podcast and see exactly what is to be expected. And the first thing that caught my eye, and again, I want to pick your brains on this before going into any examples, because I looked at the general rogue tree and then I looked at the sub rogue tree, and I cannot help but see that Shadow Dance is in both places. I know Vendetta got replaced by marked or death mark or something like that. Do you guys understand the philosophy behind this? So I can see Shadow Dance being an ability that can be used. I don't know if it's ever going to be used by the other two specs, but I feel like Shadow Dance is, and the tooltip looks the same. Am I wrong? I'm seeing Shadow Dance on.
You're right.
So
it's basically Shadow Dance, yeah.
But what? So what if I don't pick up Shadow Dance on the Rogue Tree and pick it from here? Is there any point in this, or is this just work in progress?
If you pick it up on the subtlety tree, you get 1 charge. If you pick it up on the class tree, you get 1 charge. If you pick it up on both, you get 2.
Right. Okay, but
so as of right now, you have 2 charges with Enveloping Shadows, which is the current talent that enables it. Enveloping Shadows now only gives the cooldown reduction on the sub tree. That's the one under Shadow Blades. And so you get your charges by taking the Shadow Point node or the Shadow Dance nodes.
Right, okay. But also the question remains, like, Shadow Dance now is available to all rogue specs.
Yeah.
I mean...
It's kind of weird, I think.
Why? It feels weird. Do you guys have any... Because, I don't know. I cannot see Vendetta necessarily working for a sub, but I can see, I don't know, Adrenaline Rush maybe or something like that work for sub in some capacity. I don't know. How come? Go ahead, Push.
I think Shadow Dance is fun to have on all 3 specs. I think they have the guy who made talent trees has also made synergy with Shadow Dance in the Asa and Outlaw Tree. So there is definitely thought put into having Shadow Dance on all 3 specs. So I think that's fine. My main gripe with it is that there's not really, like, sub is giving up Shadow Dance and Find Weakness to the other specs. And if you look at like Assassination and the Outlaw route, it's ER and it's T, which is not really on the same level as Shadow Dance. So I think it's a bit skewed towards sub giving up the main CD, basically.
This was what I was getting at. It doesn't feel comparable. Especially, you mentioned Find Weakness, and I know you boys mentioned it earlier. Man, Find Weakness is really, I mean, for sub, it was kind of like, always there. Now it feels like you have to really dig deep into the Rogue Tree. And correct me if I'm wrong, how is Find Weakness now on this talent tree compared to how it used to be?
I think it's comparable, honestly. But yes, while it's deep on the Rogue Tree, the subtlety tree, if you go over improved backstab at the very top, actually gives you Find Weakness on your backstab, which is basically the way that you maintain it normally nowadays. Anyways, Shadow Strike gives it, and that's why you kind of need to take Find Weakness in the class tree in order to get Shadow Strike to give Find Weakness. But because subtlety wants to go down and grab Shadow Dance in the class tree anyways, and wants to take Night Stalker, which is like the one above Mark for Death, right? Yeah. Because they want those anyways, you're already pathing through Find Weakness.
How about now we go a little bit into like the general impressions you guys have for the actual sub, and if anybody can go in.
I think the subtree has some interesting choices you can make where there's distinct different builds that you can basically craft out of this. The general one we have put here is a 7 combo point one, which is basically, I'm going to assume it's going to play out basically how we play sub right now. Similar at least. But then there is builds where you can go full backstab, for instance, and there is a poison build where you play shadow poisons and sepsis and etc. So I think that in general this tree offers good options, but the main problem is how the layout is with AoE buttons and how you have to take them to reach what we would consider core for the single target spec.
Yeah, I have similar thoughts as well. I think while the class tree is like very well organized and it kind of makes sense, obviously like the only weird thing is that dance is available for all classes, but I think the class tree in general, like the pathing makes sense. Thematically, it makes sense, right? Like you have each spec has one row, right? And so you can kind of see how the layout is supposed to ebb and flow. Like if you're playing sub, you're probably going to stay in the sub side of the tree. you're playing assassination, you're going to stay on the assassination side of the tree. But the subtlety tree doesn't really have that. For example, if you go down the left path, you get Premeditation. Premeditation has generally been seen as sort of a mythic plus talent most of the days. Now we get Weapon Master and Premeditation, so that probably changes a little bit. But it feels like, to me at least, you're going through a lot of bloat through Premeditation and then picking up Gloomblade. And it pushes a heavy builder setup.
Yeah.
Because you have like improved backstab, that's an improvement to your backstab. Weapon Master's improvement to your backstab. Premeditation's improvement to your Shadow Strike. Gloomblade replaces backstab. And so you have this like hard lean towards generators, and then all of a sudden you have auto attack, symbols crit chance, then you have symbols extension through backstab, more backstab stuff, and then you start running into random Vanish legendaries. Like you're like, oh, Vanish has an additional charge. You have Shadow Dust at the bottom, you have Rotten at the bottom. And like it makes sense, there's some coherency with like backstab being a general sort of thing on the left side of the tree. But it still feels very scattered.
It is a strange one because, as you say, it seems like he has divided up the tree in 3 parts, and the left side is just builder / symbols one. And I don't know what the thought process is, but I don't see the connection between those. There is like no thematic connection between symbols.
I was gonna pose like a noob question, which is probably something that maybe a lot more people might be thinking about, especially people who are not that proficient with sub. Because we're coming from, let's say, how they designed the Frost Decay talent tree, like the actual spec tree, where it's pretty straightforward, and whatever build you want to go, you path towards that side of the tree. And as a noob sub rogue myself, I look at it and I'm a little bit confused as to where exactly am I going to go to accomplish whatever I want to accomplish? Like, am I going to go single target purely on the left? Is AoE purely on the right? Is the middle a combination of both? It seems a little bit intertwined. And my question is, that might be, let's say, off-putting or a little bit difficult for new players to figure out, and hence guides and builds and Discord and stuff. But do you guys think that with it as it is now, it plays into itself, becoming interesting and having multiple build options? Or do you guys think that it should be more streamlined and, you know, made it slightly a little bit more cohesive?
I think the tree itself is probably okay. Like if it went live today, it'd be fine. But the 2 things that I'm missing are kind of new ideas and mobility in the tree. Because if you look, once you take Weapon Master, right, and you just go down, you're stuck on that left side of the tree. You cannot go anywhere else, right? You take improved backstab, you choose to go left, you're done. Like that's the path you're taking. Same thing on the right. If you take Shuriken Storm and then go into Relentless Strikes, right? You go down that path, you're on that path. That is the path you're taking. You go down the middle, you go down the middle. There's no left or right. Like you start very high in the tree picking where you want to go. And so you end up having this weird thing where like, well, I want to go to the bottom of one of them, but because I need to path so far, I now end up needing to only take like half of the right side if I went down all the way on the left, for example.
Yeah.
So that kind of disconnect is sort of a problem in my opinion.
It's like all 3 paths has good things for single target, and you kind of want those things. So that's why you never reach the bottom, because it's you don't have enough points, basically. So it is a problem. I think, like you said, like we said earlier before, that moving towards a connector between some nodes would easily help this issue quite a lot.
Yeah, that's one of the images that I prepared, where you see that there's I put in like green marks, red marks, and blue marks
Yep.
They don't really mean anything, but those are possible places for a connection, which just allows the tree to breathe a little bit more. Like, for example, if you wanted to take Weapon Master pre-med, right, then you would be able to change your tree at that point. You're like, okay, well, I got Weapon Master, I got pre-med, that's all I really care about. Now I'm going to go into a different part of the tree. But obviously, if you go into a different part of the tree, then you'd have to put another point into symbols, right? So that would be a choice of like, okay, well, I need symbols, so I put a point there that takes the point away already. Or like the blue line at the bottom, that's a very tough choice because it splits you out fairly late in the tree. And you have to take a utility node that you normally wouldn't take in order to get into a different part of the tree. So there's some give and take there where you go down the middle and you're like, okay, well, I like deeper daggers, I like deeper stratagem, I want finality, I want flagellation on the right side of the tree. Those points are important to me, but now I have to go through Cloaked in Shadows in order to get there. That's a quote unquote wasted point, right?
Yeah.
So something like that I think would be interesting and would really help sort of get the tree more as a choice instead of a pick a path type situation.
Yeah, it will definitely make of much more customization and build diversity. And I think this is a very, very good point because at the moment it does feel that once you start a path, you're locked. And just looking by the fixes proposed here by Whispyr, I mean, you can definitely go, with the pre-med build and then just move over to the right side and, start working on your AoE if you're going to do Mythic Plus and stuff. And similar stuff from AoE or cleave fights in the raid and move over to the left side. So yeah, I think like this is one of the biggest things we can definitely underline. Just have a couple of more options. I mean, these lines here look pretty decent to me. I don't know if it's gonna be looked at or analyzed, but something along these would go a long way for actually making the subtree a little bit more restrictive. And again, I'm looking at it for the first time and just it's clear.
It seems so simple.
It seems simple, but again, it's definitely a lot of traps in there. And one big point is that pre-med was kind of like the go-to talent for AoE dungeons and stuff, and it's there with everything with like backstab and all of that. I mean, on a philosophy term, it looks like okay, left side a single target, middle is whatever you choose, and right side is like super mythic plus, but. There's a couple of points here and there that you would need for both environments, right? So I guess this would be helpful. In any regard, we have to like go into a couple of examples the boys made for the actual build, and I do believe this is like not the final version; it's still work in progress. So everybody just calm titties. We're just looking at what we got today. We're gonna have alpha. There's probably a couple of things gonna be changed or whatever. Flame, you wanted to ask something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's looking at the tree that they made, it seems pretty deliberate to be split into the three paths, like you guys mentioned. If you go left, you have to go. You're gonna go all the way down. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they've done a single talent tree right now where there's horizontal pathing. And I don't know if they're hard stuck on having it this way, the way it is, where middle is all the way middle. You cannot branch out to the left side or to the right side. I don't know if that's what they intended to do, but if it's not, then maybe this type of an example could be an easy, I don't know if fix is the right word, but it definitely feels like it offers a lot more freedom and room to breathe. And I don't know if it's that bad to have that kind of stuff.
I mean, either this or just start moving a couple of talents, here and there. I don't know, because looking by it, there's a lot of shit here that is really good. I don't know if I would remove anything, but maybe some switcheroos between some of them would make a little bit more sense. That would be one thing. You make a good point. I don't think there has been any like left or right dots connected or whatever for any examples we had so far, but I don't see it.
There's a first for everything, right?
Yeah. But okay,
I mean,
Go ahead. Push.
another like connection you can make is actually from deepening shadows to shadowed finishers as well, and then you swap Dark Brew with Tornado. I think that would also solve a lot of issues.
Yep.
Like then you can skip all the AoE stuff if you want to go for a single target build.
Yeah, so this could be like a probable more immediate fix. I would think, by judging by how they presented the talents so far for the specs, just replacing some of the talents. But yeah, we can definitely talk a little bit now about some builds. Like, so two sub-rogue builds. We can talk about the goofy stuff as well, because I know there's some goofiness that can be happening here. Yeah. Say it now, Flame. You were muted. Go ahead.
Oh, the goofs. I was just laughing. It's fine. I had nothing intellectual to contribute.
All right. So I guess we can look at the first build the boys put together, which is
It's basically the one that you guys have been looking at so far, because I was going over some of them. So
right.
You knew what we were talking about, but this is apparently the theory crafted raid build, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing this
sort of, yeah.
Okay, so this was more or less initially made by Push. I know Whispyr also had something very, very similar. I know they both agreed on this. So Push, can you take us through a little bit on, what is the build about? What was your thoughts behind it, and just explain a little bit on how this came to be for, let's say, a pure raid night with the team.
Well, so the focus on the subtlety tree is a lot about builders, yeah? So you kind of want to buff your builders, and that's why we're going deep down into Gloomblade, and we're taking Perforated Veins just to get more damage out of our builders, because of the big talent here is Lingering Shadows, which is dependent on backstab tuning, but it could be actually insane for backstab damage, which is why we're going this kind of stabby backstab build, basically. But then again, we're also going into in the rogue class tree, we are moving towards more of a 7 combo point finisher build, where we have improved ambush. So we get 3 combo points for each shadow strike, which means you will always finish on 7 almost, because you get the shadow technique between the shadow strikes, which is obviously very good for finisher damage. So it's a kind of a mix between builder damage and finisher damage, because you also, I don't know if it's noticeable in this tree, but you're also getting a lot more damage amp in Shadow Dance in Dragonflight. Like right now on live, you have 15% baseline, but if you look at this tree, you're getting 20% from Night Stalker, you're getting 15% from Dark Shadow on top of the 10% baseline. So you're getting 45% damage amp in Shadow Dance. So you have to kind of balance them both. You want the builder damage in backstab, because it's just a lot of damage basically, but you also want to make your damage in dance very good, because it's a 45% damage amp and 10% from symbols, so 55%.
So but, yeah. I was gonna ask, like, so the backstab build more or less looks like it would turn the spec into like being super consistent, and then like when it's time to burst Shadow Dance, then that is like super impactful as well, right? So not only super powerful in Shadow Dance, but like super pumpy as backstab generator build as well. There's like the theme of it.
Yeah, like the idea we talked a bit with the dev, because he was in the Rogue class Discord, and his idea was basically just to make the out of dance damage higher, but at the same time we're also getting more Shadow Dance damage. I don't know how that's gonna balance, but it seems like an interesting like all around build basically for single targets. I think that's pretty much what we've gone with here. I think Whispyr can also say something about it.
Yeah. I think this is probably the closest build to what we have right now. There's like Perforated Veins, that's currently a conduit, right? Stiletto's a conduit. So there's a lot of stuff on here that a lot of Subtlety Rogue players will be familiar with already. There isn't anything too crazy in terms of like rotational changes. It's just a lot of passive effects that are just really, really solid. Like, there's nothing really here where you can look at it and go, oh, well, that's a wasted point. You know what I mean? I think that there is room for, further looking into things. Like, maybe you want to take the Rotten. You want to go down that left side of the tree. You want to take the Rotten for that, for more backstab damage, for more Shadow Strike damage. Maybe you want a higher Shadow Dance uptime, so you would take something like First Dance for some extra combo points, or in the class tree, you might take Echoing Reprimand to try and get the cooldown reduction on Dance higher and higher. We don't really know what that's going to be. There's also, some opportunities with Sepsis being a thing, or you lean more into finisher damage. Those are all options. We just don't know how the tuning will balance out. And so right now, this is sort of the safe pick, right? Like, this is the pick that we know, regardless of tuning, will probably be fine. Like, if they tune everything sort of how we expect them to, then no matter what happens, if you just play this tree, right, you can play this tree in raids all expansion, and you'll probably be okay.
Speaking of tuning, I was gonna point out the elephant in the room. There's no like last row talents taken in the subtree. Is there a problem with their tuning in general? Since you would think that aiming for the bottom, treasure box, whatever that unleash would be the goal. But from what you guys seem to think, the best potential raid build is actually stopping at what's the name again? Lingering Shadow, and that's about it, right?
The problem with the capstone nodes for sub is that Rotten is behind Invigorating Shadow Dust, which is perhaps not the best single target talent, and Flagellation is without the obedience benefits, which makes it a lot weaker on single target, and it's also behind Finality. So, which is Rupture. From what it reads like right now, Rupture won't really work with this talent unless something is changed. So you're missing that as well. And Shadow Mist is just, it seems like a PvP talent, if I'm gonna be honest, Shadow Mist. So that's why it's not taken in this build in particular. Because it is a cheap point. You can just take it, it's just 1 point. So you could technically take it, but I don't think it does much for PvE at the moment.
It's weird. I was expecting to see some sort of split between Flagellation and Obedience. Very surprised it's only Flagellation here, but yeah, I cannot wait to get into the assassination talk and see how that got into that. It's weird because I think Obedience was I don't know if Whispyr was on the same boat, but I think that was pretty decent, and it enabled a couple of cool things gameplay wise. Just seeing the usual the just pale Flagellation Covenant ability, but Obedience really made it interesting. So maybe there's a chance over there. Who knows? And tuning wise, yeah. Again, guys, this is all speculative, theoretical. As Whispyr said, the safe zone here, probably a lot of the stuff is going to change, no doubt. So just take it with a grain of salt. But I'm kind of happy to see that this. I was expecting way bigger issues, to be fair. After looking at Feral and a couple of the others, didn't have much hope, especially for a class like Rogue. I was very, 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 I would say cautiously optimistic on what was to come.
You say that, but at the same time, you have to take, to build your single target build, you have to take Black Powder, improved Shuriken Storm, and you have to take Replicating Shadows. I think that's kind of bad, actually. That has to be fixed somehow.
Oh, for sure. But it doesn't look like it's as bad as Feral. Just looking at it, because you obviously even in pure single target you don't really make use of things like Black Powder or whatever. Maybe there's trash or whatever, but if it's the pure single target fight, clearly you won't make use out of it. As we mentioned at the beginning, if they could move a couple of point talents around and make it more cohesive, more logical, then yeah, sure. But I'm pretty happy that there's a safe zone. We'll get into like the I would say big problems, sure. Once we get through the builds.
If you guys don't mind, I was gonna ask you again. I'm coming from the noob side of the camp because I think the noobs need to be represented as well. So, but I'm looking at going into the raid build that you guys were looking at into the general rogue tree, and I see a bunch of stuff on the assassination. Now I can imagine evasion, maybe numbing poison, but is the assassination side of the general tree only there for the deadly precision talent, or is there any other benefits there in growth and things like that? Which I imagine evasion is, pretty self-explanatory, but...
Yeah, so I think the main thing about the assassination side of the class tree is that you need 8 points. And that line on the Wowhead calculator, we've been told by the dev, is actually 1 line too low. So the 8 points required is above Shadow Step, Improved Sprint, and Fleet-Footed. So you have to get your 8 points from Numbing, Gouge, and Tricks of the Trade and up. So if you just take the starters going into each one of the rows, you have 5 points if you just avoid the assassination tree, right? You have Blind, Feint, Gouge, Cloak of Shadows, Tricks of the Trade. You get Sap for free. So that's 5 points. So now you need to find 3 more points somewhere, right? You could take Nimble Fingers. You could take Rushed Setup, right? Like, they're not terrible choices. Garrote is the only, like, clear damage choice that's available. Evasion is, you don't really use it that much, but it exists. Numbing Poison is actually pretty good because it actually works on a lot of stuff, slowing attack speed, for example. So I personally really like numbing. I think numbing it's just something that you kind of just want to have. And then from there, it's also the question of where would I put those points otherwise? So if you go to numbing just to get your 8 points, then you have 4 points that you can put in, right? You have Fleet-Footed, Improved Garrote, and Deadly Precision. Those 4 points need to go somewhere if you're not going to put them in the assassination tree. And for those 4 points, you could get like Acrobatic Strikes, I guess. That's just a range increase. Elusiveness. You could get Lethality. That's some damage. But the Deadly Precision and Lethality are very similar in the way that they're both just crit chance, and then Lethality is a little bit of crit damage. So realistically, when you take the points out and then try to put them back in, you're kind of getting to the same spots. And there's not really anything that's overly tempting to where you're like, oh, those 4 points could definitely take me somewhere. Like Echoing Reprimand is possible, but is it that good? We don't know.
And I assume this train of thought doesn't apply to the Outlaw side because I see Improved Ambush that you guys mentioned. Versatility, which is 4% versatility, I suppose. So those are okay, I suppose. Plus sprint.
The focus on builders in the subtree makes Deadly Precision actually really good, I think, because it works on Shadow Strike and Backstab, yeah, so it's pretty strong. And Lethality is also very strong, so yeah, I think it's just a very good side, the Asa tree as well, like the Asa side of the tree.
The Outlaw tree as well, you mentioned, is like versatility is one of the traditionally better stats for subtlety. Just having 4% of it is just 4% more damage, right? But then you also have Improved Ambush, and since Shadow Strike replaces Ambush, you basically have to read this as Shadow Strike has a chance to generate 1 additional combo point. And it's 100% at rank 2, so your Shadow Strike just permanently is a 3 combo point builder. Which is pretty powerful. So
insane,
not
yeah.
only do you get good verse, you also get another combo point on your Shadow Strike, which just makes the Outlaw tree like pretty crazy. And that's sort of why we kind of dive to go into those nodes, is because there's just a lot of high value in that split.
I will say though that if you play Improved Ambush, if you're looking at this, you kind of have to take 2 deeper stratagem nodes, because otherwise you're going to overcap your combo points quite a lot. So just keep that in mind if you're looking at the build.
Oh yeah. more combo points, more dangers of wasting them. Better get that deeper stratagem.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's see a little bit the Mythic Plus build. And this is more or less okay, I don't know if I have the right one open up here. Do you have open?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, so Whispyr, take us through a little bit the philosophy on this one for Mythic Plus.
Sure. So I'll go with the rogue tree first.
Yep.
Just the general tree. You see that we're now taking virulent poisons. We're taking a point in that in the assassination tree as well as cold blood. And then in the outlaw tree, we got rid of the ambush additional combo point chance. And that's where we get our points from in order to take virulent poisons and cold blood. But aside from that, it's a lot of the same. Cold blood has some interactions with improved Shuriken Storm, which makes critical strikes from Shuriken Storm apply find weakness. Cold blood increases the crit strike chance of your next damaging ability by 100%. So if you want to spread find weakness to everything, you hit cold blood, you hit storm, and boom, like you're there. So that's kind of a potent combo for Mythic Plus. The rest of it is all still same old sub, as you know. But then in the sub tree, we do take a couple of differences. So you'll see that, for example, Gloomblade is gone. Inevitability is gone. If you go down the left side, we stop at planned execution. If you go down the right tree, we're now going farther. And we're also no longer taking lingering shadows in the middle. And that all basically boils down to you're not going to be pressing backstab in Mythic Plus that often. Because when you're on a boss, you have Shadow Dance charges, and the bosses don't last that long. So you're not getting that many backstabs in. And other than that, you're going to be using Storm almost exclusively. So we want to buff Storm. We want to buff our finishers. Because we have those, we have a lot of combo points coming in. And so we go down the tree to get Finality. Flagellation's just 1 point away. Tornado's 1 point away. Those are both good talents for trying to funnel some damage in, which is traditionally kind of been sub's role in Mythic Plus. And then the rest of it is just generically good damage, just overall.
Yep. It's looking pretty similar. Yep, go ahead, Push.
I just want to point out that you can also, if you're not going to funnel or something, you can just remove this flagellation point and you can take something else. You can take Secret Technique if you want that. If it's good, like Tune Good, you can take First Stance to get more combo points.
Yeah.
So there's some like flagellation, that button or like that node is kind of flexible in the tree. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think Tornado might actually also be flexible depending on how the tuning works out.
Yeah.
Like if you don't need the burst from Tornado, especially if you don't take Flag, Tornado and Flag kind of go hand in hand because during Flagellation you want to generate a bunch of combo points, and Shuriken Tornado gives you a bunch of combo points on demand. But if you're not taking Flagellation, then Tornado kind of loses a bit of its value as well. So in that case, you might actually want to sort of talent out of it, and maybe you have something like a Theater of Pain, where you will be doing a little bit more shadow striking than usual, and a little bit more backstabbing than usual. And then I think that you might actually take something like Invigorating Shadow Dust on the left side of the tree, and you go back into that. Obviously, that's all tuning dependent, and we don't know how the dungeons will look and how the old dungeons are tuned for Mythic Plus. So a lot of that's up in the air. But again, this Mythic Plus tree that we have here is basically how Subtlety plays in Mythic Plus right now, right? It's the safe option again. It's something that's familiar, something that we all know how to play, and like that's sort of just the general baseline of where sub is right now.
Special shout out to 7 combo points in Mythic Plus as well. I think that can be really cool, like for funnel damage and so on. Because you will have really high damage finishers. and a lot of them. Plus, you have a lot of Shadow Dance, right? Because you're spending and building a lot. So Dark Shadow and additional amp on Shadow Dance with 45% is gonna make. I mean, you're gonna do a lot of damage in AoE situations. I think. Pre-tuning, of course.
Was gonna ask a question that can segue into another thing that Whispyr and I discussed a little bit in the DMs. Some of a misconception that can maybe clear some air. So, my question first of all is: does Cold Blood work with Shuriken Tornado? So, would you get crits on all of the damage procs of Tornado, or does it just on the damage proc? And with that in mind, we can segue into what talent interactions work and what don't, because from the tooltip, some things sound like they should work and they don't, and some things are a little bit ambiguous, at least for a beginner rogue player. So maybe you guys can discuss that a little bit. Is that intended? Is it gonna go on, or is it like an oversight?
So Cold Blood, if you use it with something like Tornado, probably will not work. Because Tornado counts each Shuriken Storm as a cast. And so the way that it currently works with Symbols of Death, which has a similar effect, right? Symbols of Death makes your next generator crit. When you cast Symbols of Death before a Tornado, it makes the first storm in the Tornado crit, and then that uses the buff and it's gone. So I would assume that Cold Blood works identically to that, since the wording is very, very similar. You just pop it before a Tornado, and then the first storm will guarantee crit, and that's kind of the end of that.
Yep. One cool thing the dev said that he didn't know if it works like this or not, because they haven't seen it in game, I guess, is if you Cold Blood a Sepsis, if the Sepsis is gonna do 100% crit for the entire dot duration, which is kind of a weird thing, but yeah, that's one of the interactions that we don't know if it works yet, but it could.
Yeah, that's something for Assassination as well, because Assassination, spoiler, also takes Cold Blood in a lot of trees. But Assassination has a lot of dots, and we just don't know how Cold Blood interacts with dots. It might just not use up Cold Blood at all. Like if you use Cold Blood and then a Rupture, it might just not work. But we just simply have no idea what the limitations are on Cold Blood. It could be really good if it could, for example, buff like a giga ability in AoE, but it's a bleed. So
yeah.
Do you have 100% crit for 20 seconds? No clue.
I'm smelling cool. Snapshotting here, Whispyr, and I know you don't like snapshotting, man. No, we're not going to get into that. But to be fair, I'm kind of happy they put back Cold Blood, because I think it was a PvP talent for at least 2 expansions, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know, it's not like the most fun abilities, but it does make you, have a little bit of a setup. Okay, so if I want to start doing the Giga Burst or whatever, I can use this. And I know you mentioned that if you're going to use Cold Blood, I think like the best way to apply Find Weakness, you can use it with Shuriken Storm, and there you go. All your targets are Find Weakness. There's your damage amp. I think it's pretty cool. But we're going to talk about Assassination when the right time comes and see what's that all about. Snapshotting. So Mythic Plus build, pretty decent. Flame, if you want to add something, go ahead. If not, we're just going to go into like some...
Yeah, it was regarding my question, it was in relation to like stealth mechanics. So does improved Garrote work with Shadow Dance is what I'm going for, and are there any other stealth mechanics that don't work with Shadow Dance the way you would think they would work?
So yeah, I have one thing for that. Subterfuge to the right of the class tree does not extend Shadow Dance by 3 seconds, which some people might think, but it doesn't. That's not how it works. I think improved Garrote will work in Dance because it's... Yeah, I think that will work because it's basically stealth. I don't know if Whispyr has any other news on that, but I think it's... Because Assassination has a similar thing with 50% more damage on Garrote, and I think that's a a deliberate synergy with Shadow Dance. So I think it's gonna work.
Yeah. I had to go into the bowels of the Rogue Discord, into the PvP channel, to find the dev talking about interactions. And there was a quote where he said that if something says that it works in stealth, it will work in dance, which is a big shift, sort of, especially coming from assassination. Subtlety obviously has a little bit easier of a time making dance work, but it's a big shift from where we are currently, because something like Master Assassin, which is a legendary and a talent that increases crit strike chance during stealth, that is now rumored to work with dance. Something like Subterfuge Garrotes, like the increased damage on Garrotes that Assassination previously had to use Vanish for in order to get 3 out. That's sort of like the bread and butter of Assassination.
Yeah.
That now also works with Dance, and Dance is 9 seconds. So, like, you're getting these crazy stealth interactions that haven't existed for 10 years almost.
I'm excited, but I kind of like this.
I'm excited as well, but I think that it's a tuning nightmare.
Let them.
And I don't want to like throw the dev under the bus or anything, but I find it hard to believe that when they said that, they fully know what they were getting into. Because if you open up Dance for all stealth interactions, like, you're getting into some deep shit. Like, it's a can of worms that you don't really want to open.
I mean, they made Destro Lux in this patch, so I don't think anything can get crazier than that, right?
True.
Yeah.
But dude, they'll have 100 more people on the team. Come on, they're gonna have more men.
And all of them will be on the stealth interactions of Shadow Dance.
You're gonna have a focus group.
It's fine.
Like, okay, everybody, stop working on your priests and mages or whatever. Get everybody onto Rogue. We fucked up with the Shadow Dance to everybody. Let's fix it. Oh man, but no, it is exciting. At least at this point in time, all of these interactions with stealth mechanics are really, really cool. I'm a bit hyped. Speaking of tuning, fuck them.
Yeah, well, they can figure out. But I was gonna ask something.
Rogue to the top.
Yes.
Yeah. Finally.
Okay,
let's go.
I was gonna ask you guys a question that's a little bit more general. Since when we normally had our spec discussions regarding the old talents, we always talk about dead talents and things that can be changed around. And obviously, looking at the talent tree right now, it's like a wholly different dynamic. It's not choose one of 3 all the time. So overall, in terms of build diversity, options, playstyle diversity, and things like that, how do you guys feel about the talent trees? At least the one that we have now, obviously, is probably subject to change. Going into Dragonflight compared to what we have now or what we've been having for the last couple of years. How do you feel about it, and general opinions and stuff like that?
From a subtlety point of view, I think it's a massive upgrade. We have so many dead talents in the live tree. We basically play the same for everything, and we swap Master of Shadows for Tornado for M+. And I think that's kind of boring, so I think this is a big upgrade. No matter how it goes, I think this is just straight better than the old choose 103. So in that case, it's a positive direction for sure.
Yeah. I also think that's a positive direction, but I still have some concerns about dead talents. Like, for example, one of the biggest issues in Mythic Plus was how Secret Technique just got overshadowed instantly.
Yeah.
Secret Technique is a cooldown finisher, which does AoE. And it was supposed to be like this, like low target cleave finisher. It hits like 5 targets or whatever, and it hits them hard. And that's sort of how it worked for like the first 3 months of the expansion. And then because it didn't interact with anything, it just fell out of favor. Like, Black Powder does shadow damage, and you can see that with shadowed finishers. It says Eviscerate and Black Powder deal an additional 40% damage as shadow to targets with your Find Weakness active. But it doesn't include secret technique the same way that secret technique wasn't included from any find weakness interaction in Shadowlands as well. So it's still just sitting there suffering, like without having to interact with anything. It's the loner sitting in the corner of the room that like wants to be involved but just can't, you know?
It's also weird that you have to take black powder to even get it. So you have to take the other AoE finisher to even get it, and I don't know, it's kind of strange. And I think it's if it's tuned really high, then sure, but I don't see it happening. So it's kind of a super bad talent at the moment.
Yeah, there's also the issue that it deals physical damage, and like sure you have find weakness on stuff which bypasses armor, but the thing about sub these days is shadow damage completely ignores armor, right? Because it's magic damage. Magic damage just rips through the target, and it's basically true damage if you're familiar with like League of Legends, for example. And so when you're doing a bunch of shadow damage with your black powder, and then you look at secret technique and it deals physical damage, first off, like it's not going to do damage without find weakness. Like you have to get find weakness on the targets in order for it to do damage. But even then, you're not ignoring all of it, so it's still reduced. So even buffing secret technique to just deal straight shadow damage is already a buff. Yeah. But I don't know. It's got a weird design. It's sort of the first iteration of a talent that then never got iterated on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that it is basically a requirement to get black powder in order to activate secret technique is just counterintuitive because it doesn't have any synergies whatsoever with anything. Maybe this is a good opportunity for them to finally look at it, but I don't know if they're gonna put like shadow damage onto it. Yeah, it's gonna be weird. It's still weird. I don't know, man.
I would prefer if it was a choice node between either BP or secret technique, and you had to and if you buff it, of course, and then you could choose if you want a big blast finisher in AoE, burst AoE, or if you want sustained AoE.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good idea.
Wouldn't that put like your AoE finisher on a choice between either a cooldown or a non-cooldown?
Yep, that as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, you found a lot in M+ already, so having it on a cooldown is not terrible, and that's how we played sub in all of BFA basically. So I don't think it's too bad if the tuning is right.
Yeah, I mean, a secret technique was taken at the start of Shadowlands. Like it's not like that. Like obviously, like black powder is baseline, but the gameplay loop that exists already exists, right? It's not a crazy idea for Subtlety to just not have an AoE finisher for 20 seconds, because during that time we're still eviscerating. And that eviscerate funnel is kind of what Subtlety is known for these days. If you'd like that or not, that's up to interpretation. But that's sort of where the spec is in Mythic Plus. Yes, it does AoE damage, but you don't really bring it for the AoE damage. And so having that burst option is I think more thematic.
Oh.
If I could choose, I would get rid of BP and just have a much better secret technique. That would be my personal ideal like M+ build for sub.
Oh really? So you would remove black powder altogether?
Yeah, I think sub should focus on ideally, sub should focus on funneling and doing maybe like Whispyr said, some instance of burst AoE damage, like every 20 seconds ish. I think that would be more what my vision for sub is, at least.
Yeah, so super potent funnel damage, and once on a cooldown based stuff, have like a super impactful AoE burst, that sort of thing.
Yeah, if you could also see it interact with, let's say, Cold Blood. If you want, if it's actually good, then you can use Cold Blood, your secret technique, and it's doing even more burst damage. So it's pretty cool if it.
Would that world require secret technique to not be target capped at, what is it now, 5 targets?
It's 8 on. They changed it when they uncapped stuff. They made it. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's 8 now.
I think it's 8 as well.
The tooltip doesn't say. Okay.
Yeah, it's weird, right? I think that like while taking away a baseline AoE finisher is a little bit scary to a lot of people, you have to realize that the while you're taking away the sustained AoE tool, it allows you to buff other parts and give some a meaningful niche, right? Because if you do both good AoE and good funnel, now you're just OP. But if you do really good funnel and not that great AoE, right? That's a niche. That's Feral Druid, right? Feral Druid is like crazy single target, but you put it in an AoE pack, it does dog shit damage, right? But it's about having or like giving the spec something that it can sort of rely on as a tool, instead of just having it do everything, but kind of poorly.
Yeah,
that would make the gameplay and the game itself a little bit more interesting. Not sure exactly if the encounter designs in the last couple of patches were friendly to niche specs. Don't think Ferals would would like to agree that they like their single targets with no proper AoE output, but
yeah, it's always a question of encounter design and how every environment, raid boss or dungeon or whatever is going to cater to multiple builds and whatnot. This was always the case. It's going to be the case here also. I don't know, man. I mean, I get it, and I 100% agree with the philosophy behind just making it a very great niche spec. But when I saw they introduced Black Powder, I was like, oh man, this is and it felt thematic. It felt thematic at the time. But regardless, I mean, if it's something that it's definitely going to put a better highlight on the spec and actually make it like representative for what it is and what it's kind of got placed into, then yeah, I'm all down for it. Let's talk about some crazy builds. Like I know before recording, the boys talked about the possibility of going full on sepsis, flagellation, and the echoing reprimand. Can that work, my boys? Is that something you would play?
I mean, it could work if it, depending on the tuning. The way you would get to that, by the way, is actually not that bad. Like if you look at the raid tree that we were looking at, and then you take out perforated veins, lingering shadow, then you pick up sepsis and 2 points in finality, and now you can get rid of say Gloomblade, for example, right? You can get rid of Dark Shadow as well and fade to nothing. But if you get rid of Gloomblade, now you have access to Flagellation as well, so now you have both. And then it's just a matter of some simple rerouting, taking points out of the class tree, and then going down the Outlaw path for 4 points. Well, I think it's actually 3. For 3 points, like you just move 3 points out, and all of a sudden, now you also have Echoing Reprimand, right? Like it's very easy to take out 3 points here and there, and now all of a sudden you have 3 Covenant abilities.
The circus build now.
All we're missing was what is this? Certed Bone Spike or what?
I mean, look,
the Necrolord.
Yeah.
There's man, you're gonna have so much fun with Sims Whisper when this is gonna go on. Oh man, I cannot wait to see.
It's gonna be a mess. I can't wait to pop into the Rogue Discord and go, hey, what's the APL like for casting 3 Covenant abilities at once? Does the Sim support that?
I'm gonna be DMing a lot. I promise.
Oh god.
Oh
yeah, you and Selly.
It's fun.
There's gonna be a lot of it. But the thing is, it is possible. I don't know in which scenario you would go for this. Again,
I think in the scenario where you kind of want to say, "Hey, Ian, what?
Yeah,
Covenant lockdown. Look at this, 3 Covenant abilities.
This.
Yeah, they finally pulled the ripcord, guys.
The new expansion.
I mean, you can in a burst scenario, if you need 1.5 minute bursts, then using sepsis, flagellation, and ER at the same time, that's a burst.
They kind of all line up because sepsis and flag are both 1.5 minutes, and Echoing Reprimand is 45.
Yeah.
So So, in theory, every other Echoing Reprimand lines up with Sepsis and Flagellation, which then in turn each line up with Shadow Blades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of cooldowns. Cooldowns on cooldowns.
Yeah, you just spend like 6 or 7 GCDs just casting cooldowns.
It's so weird, but I mean, it's fun.
Outside of like, let's say, super competitive gameplay mode, like, mythic rating or, high-end mythic plus or whatever, I can see things like this work out if they like put in some different gameplay mode, like, I don't know, Mage Tower-like stuff or Torghast, but in a good way, Torghast type shit, then I can definitely see this. I don't know, World PvP, all of that. I think like the coolest thing is that you can actually do it. And it's sort of like, I would say, I don't know, a dirty fantasy of like having 3 Covenant abilities active at the same time. Is there any other class that can actually get this, or is?
Well, from what we know so far, I think the Rogue is the only one that has more than 1 or 2 Covenant abilities
like all
into
3.
their. I'm thinking DK. I don't think DK has anything other than Abomination Limb. Druid only has Convoke and I think Dark Swarm. That's
right.
So yeah, I think.
Cheers to the Rogues then. More fun to be had, definitely.
Well, it's good that the new approach to Talent Tree, which I mean we're calling it Talent Tree, but to an extent this is also your spell book, right? Because outside of 10 baseline spells that you're gonna have, pretty much everything else that you will learn is through your Talent Tree. I mean, you're learning Evasion, Cloak, Shadow Dance, Shadow Step through the Talent Tree, and if you decide to not put those points in, you're not gonna have them, even though they were baseline for years.
I mean, yeah, but
you can call it a builder class, basically.
Yeah, indeed.
It's interesting how they look now, because I cannot help but think on future the expansion after Dragonflight, because they want to build on this. Like, how in the fuck?
Path of Exile, baby. We're gonna have like spreads of talents everywhere.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, the dream.
Hey, I love Path of Exile. That sounds good to me. I'm a math guy. I'll sit in front of a Path of Exile tree for 3 hours. I don't care.
Can you imagine making a spec guide with like 60 points and left and 60 right?
No, you're gonna get. I don't know. They're gonna have to like invent a school for that or something. Get a degree and shit, and
it's gonna turn into a podcast.
Yeah.
I do have one last question though, especially for Whispyr, mainly because to me. So it's about Thistle Tea. To me, it seems boring, and obviously I'm a noob rogue, so what do I know? But compared to, let's say, Shadow Dance, it's a boring talent. Now, is it still any good? Is there any possibility? Is it a meme? And maybe why is it a meme? Because I've heard people praise it or like it, or is it more nostalgia, or does it actually have any kind of value to the spec?
Sure. So Thistle Tea in general, it falls under this weird thing where you can think of it as Marked for Death, but for your energy bar. And in, classic days, Wrath of the Lich King days, specs were a lot slower than they are now. Like the energy bar wasn't even smooth. You'd have to sit there and, wait for each increment of the energy bar to fill up for the old school people. And so in that case, Thistle Tea was kind of a really good consumable at the time, because you could just instantly fill your energy bar and you could get back to stabbing, right? So instead of having these long 6-7 second wait periods between you actually hitting a button, Thistle Tea allowed you to actually do something. These days, there's a lot of energy regeneration already built into a lot of the specs. There's stuff like Shadow Focus, there's stuff like Shadow Techniques. And so those sorts of things give you a lot of energy. Even just Relentless Strikes, right, is 6 energy per combo point spent. So if you're spending a 7 combo point finisher, that's a ton of energy. Like, that is just an insane amount of energy. That's 42 energy, right? And so you look at Thistle Tea and you're like, okay, well, Thistle Tea is 100 energy on a 1 minute cooldown. Relentless Strikes is 42 energy every time I finish. do I really need Thistle Tea? Like, is Thistle Tea something where if I use it, I'm actually going to get value out of it? And the answer for most specs these days is no. When it matters, you're already going to be drowning in energy. You're already going to be capped by your GCD more than you are by your energy. And having to take leeching poison, like Cold Blood into leeching poison, into Seal Fate, into Thistle Tea, I'm not a believer right now. Could there be a world where Thistle Tea randomly shows up in some burst macro? Sure, I guess. I don't know. But realistically speaking, Thistle Tea is just a dead talent. Like you'd never take it.
I have a hot take on this, if I may. Like if you play a heavy backstab build, and if you read Lingering Shadows, it means you're going to do 100% more damage as Shadow on your backstab after ending dance. I can, and Seal Fate is actually really good for backstab because it has 28% more crit baseline with the talents you choose for it. So you will crit a lot, and you will get a lot of combo points from backstab. But my idea, or like the hot take, is that when you leave Shadow Dance, you use Thistle Tea and you spam the living hell out of backstabs to get the most use out of that 100% buffer from Lingering Shadows. So you're basically condensing a bunch of energy and damage into the first seconds after dance. And that's like the only use I can see for sub for that. That's my hot take on it.
It's also cursed as hell.
Yep, it is. It's super cursed, but that's fun. I like cursed things, so it's cool.
Sub OTP.
Yep.
I can see Thistle Tea for the spammy noob. I can see Flame using it for sure. I can just see him, just spamming everything, being always out of energy. I can see that happening. I can see the reason why it's there.
It's meant for people like me. It's fine. It's
The other problem though is Thistle Tea is its own button. So like it can be the noob friendly version for people who run out of energy, but then like you have to find another bind for it, which makes it not noob friendly. So like what's the point, Like what is it doing?
Just make sure you have an extra keybind on one main button mouse, Like
might as well pick Vigor, right?
Yeah, take Vigor and Thistle Tea, put everything there, so you be sure you don't,
I don't want my yellow bar to ever drop.
Yeah, it's gonna be always like that.
You take both Vigor and Thistle Tea, and then you just spam.
It's perfect.
That way you don't overcap.
Yeah.
Huge.
Well, we're breaking new ground here, man.
A big brain. You take Vigor so that you get 50 more max energy, so that when you use Thistle Tea, it doesn't overcap you. You get bigger value out of it.
It's just thinking, man. It's thinking.
That's why
the way
they
the
pay me
future.
the big bucks.
Yep.
I don't get paid for shit.
All right. So I'm guessing we kind of covered, let's say, like the more or less the basics. Got into a little bit of detail here, but I think it was necessary. Obviously, there's a lot more to touch on, but more details are to come, and we do have a planned assassination discussion on the talents as well as Outlaw soon to come. I kind of loved it. It kind of got me hyped. It's probably gonna main Rogue again in Dragonflight if things go this path back to the Rogue. I mean, generally the impression is good. There's always things that you can feedback and propose on changing stuff or whatnot. But generally, and I got this from you guys as well. And I listen to people like you more than I listen to myself. You get a overall positive impression on the philosophy behind it. So people out there who are interested on playing Rogue next expansion, or even like main Rogues today, can at least breathe a little bit more easily with this first one. There's going to be a lot of iteration on this. Alpha is right around the corner, and cannot wait for everybody to get their hands on it and actually test stuff out. Also would like to mention, that, if you want to check Whispyr or Push, obviously the first place is Ravenholdt, the Discord over there. Everything you want to know about Rogues, regardless of the spec, that's the place you want to go. But, we're going to have links for Twitches and Twitters and what have you. All socials will be in the description of the video, so do make sure to check them out. like top-notch boys, more than willing to always help out and you know get out the proper information. Hope we covered like most of the important things, boys. As we're getting to the closing notes here, if there's anything left that we didn't talk about, now is the time.
I kind of have 2 quick points.
Yes.
The first one is for all the people who played like sub and WoD. I think it's really understated, and we didn't really hinge on it too much. But the Rogue Tree just gives you Garrote. Like Garrote is coming back on Subtlety, and it's just there, which is something that Subtlety hasn't had since Warlords of Draenor.
Yep.
But I think the other thing, sub specifically, is if you look at the sub tree, it kind of looks weird on first glance, and that's, in my opinion, because you have 3 options to start with. If you look at a lot of like spec specific trees, they all start with like 1 option and then it branches. But with the sub tree, it starts with 3 already, which is it looks really odd to me. And some people were suggesting that maybe you move Shadow Dance up and make that be the first option. I would probably argue that you move Symbols of Death up and make that the first option. But I don't know. I think that having 3 options to start with is a little weird.
It's probably what causes all these issues with the bloating, and you have to choose one line to go through.
Yeah.
So, we mentioned earlier.
Was about to say, this is like the starting point, kind of like gets you already in the situation when you feel locked. But yeah, Garrote back for sub. I cannot wait to PvP. Some proper arenas with my Garrote again on Subtlety is going to be huge. But yeah,
Gouch as well.
Yes. I mean, we can have another hour on talking PvP with how Subtlety is looking. But yeah, I think this is a fair point. And once again, gotta stress it out. It's not final. It's the first iteration. Feedback is being gathered. And I love that the devs are listening and talking, to folks on the Discord, listening to hopefully podcasts like this. And, on the videos and stuff. Hopefully it's for the better, and we're gonna get some some positive changes all around.
It's looking good. It's looking good.
Yeah. But with that being said, I guess we can wrap it up. Thank you, Mr. Pushnoir, for joining and accepting. Although it was kind of short notice, so we doubly appreciate you for it. And Whispyr, who is, I don't know when Whispyr sleeps or whatever. He's just like this.
Sleeps?
Yeah, that's a good question. This non-tired, machine of information and willingness to help, and it's just a good soul, and we love him for it.
We couldn't have done this without Whispyr. He masterminded and organized and got the people in and the info and everything so that you guys can enjoy an awesome introspective chat on sub.
Yeah, gotta love Flame.
We love Whispyr.
Yeah, everybody should.
I'm
gonna
take a nap later, honestly. I'm on 3.5 hours of sleep.
There you go.
Buddy's gonna shut down. No more batteries.
Recharge, buddy, recharge. But once again, guys, check the description for all of the links for both Whispyr and Pushnoir, and let us know what you think of the sub tree so far, the Rogue Tree so far, and stay close because we're gonna have I think Assassination is next pretty soon. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, and for coming, and make sure you check more of our videos on Marcelian and other podcasts on our Mocast channel that you can find about other specs and other talents and all that stuff, and more content to come, as it seems like more Dragonflight content is being announced.
Yes.
More and more.
Yes.
So we won't have a vacation.
All right.
Fine.
Bye-bye!
Shadowlands. I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.